Welcome to Sleepy Scientist. I'm Christopher. Tonight we drift into wonder together. Where in the world are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear where our quiet-led community is falling asleep tonight.
Chapter 1. A door that shouldn't open. You're standing at the base of a hill. Before you, a smooth slope rises like a silent sentinel. Tall, steep, and still. At your feet rests a tiny marble, resting softly in a hollow of quiet certainty. If you nudge it, it rolls a little, maybe halfway up the hill, then falls back with a whisper. You know this dance. Gravity, resistance, energy. It is the language of the world you trust, a world of cause and effect, of effort and reward, of doors that stay shut unless the right key turns. But tonight let the wind slow, and listen. What if you woke to find the marble on the other side of the hill, unpushed, unbroken, moved without force, not because you rolled it hard enough or lifted it or cheated the slope, but simply because it wasn't there anymore. It was through, past the wall, resting where it shouldn't be with no footsteps in the grass. The rules of the classical world, the world you touch, hear and walk through, are rules built on certainty. Solid things stay solid. Energy must be spent to move objects. If there is a wall, something must climb or break it. These are the comforting agreements we share with nature, but every now and then the universe smiles quietly and breaks its own contract. Down where your eyes can't see, beneath the stillness of stone, beneath the cells of your skin, past molecules and atoms, there is a realm where marbles don't play fair, a place where the wall still stands. But something passes through it anyway. No crack, no hole, no force, just a hush and a slip. And this is where our story begins, not with a bang or flash, but with a whisper in the dark. A door that should stay closed quietly swings open. Entering the quantum realm, close your eyes, float with me. You are not made of one thing, but of many. Particles, dancing, swirling, shimmering in states unseen. Each atom of you, of the stars, of the water in a teacup, of the dust on a windowsill, is a ghost wrapped in probability. Nothing here is still. Now breathe slower, not just because it's bedtime, but because we're going somewhere that asks you to be very, very still. In this place, this quantum world, particles are not balls or bricks. They are waves and questions. They blur and shimmer like candlelight on water. You cannot point to one and say, "There it is," without also disturbing its dance. To look is to change. To measure is to awaken a decision. You see, the quantum realm doesn't obey the logic of everyday sight. Instead, it drifts in uncertainty, like fog across a quiet field. A particle might be here, or there, or both. It might pass through one path or two at once. And when it reaches a wall, something it shouldn't cross, it doesn't always stop. Instead, it remembers it's both a particle and a wave, and waves do not halt like stones. They ripple, they flow, they reach. So picture a soft wave rolling up against a wall. Most of it bounces back, but not all. A thin ripple leaks through, not by force, not by defiance, but simply by nature. And that thin ripple, that quiet persistence, that is the beginning of something extraordinary. It is the first breath of what we call quantum tunneling. An impossible journey begins. You're lying beneath the stars now. They stretch above you, bright, ancient, and silent. But deep inside the atoms of those stars, of your body, and of every speck in between, particles are tunneling, tiny travelers, slipping through boundaries that should be closed. Imagine a bee flying at a window. The glass is solid. The bee cannot pass unless the window opens. That's the world you know. But in the quantum world, the bee hums softly. And sometimes, without shattering the glass or finding a crack, it is simply through. It is on the other side, its wings still gently buzzing. This is not a trick, not magic, not madness. It is physics, real and tested, but of a kind that wears mystery like a soft robe. It is why the sun shines, why fusion in stars continues. It is why transistors, the little beating hearts of every computer, even function. Tunneling is not just a curious phenomenon, it is a keyhole through which the future passes. But it begins so small, so delicate, just a particle, alone, with not enough energy to climb the hill, a hill it should bounce back from. Yet in the math of probabilities, in the language of perhaps and maybe, there is a small, soft chance that it will be found on the other side, not every time, not even often, but enough. Enough to change everything, because sometimes impossibility is only a wall we haven't looked through gently enough. What happens in the quiet? Now rest if you wish. Let your breathing fall into rhythm with the silence around you. Let's not explain too much here. Let's just be in the hush, in the place between thoughts, the same place particles live before they're seen. Because in the quantum world, quiet things matter most. A single particle's journey, invisible, strange, forgotten, might power the birth of a galaxy. A faint ripple slipping through a barrier might be the reason you can read these words on a screen, or hear them whispered in your ear. No announcement, no explosion, just tunneling. The soft yes that follows a million probable no's. And what is sleep, if not that? You too pass barriers without force. You drift from thought to dream, from question to peace. Your mind, once full of the day's noise, begins to float, slipping gently through the edges of what was and into what could be. This is tunneling too, emotional tunneling, a soul's way of moving through the impossible without ever making a sound. And so maybe the universe is not just a machine of rules. Maybe it is a poem, whispered in probabilities, sung in stillness. And maybe you, made of atoms, born of stars, are not meant to always push against your walls. Maybe sometimes you are meant to soften and pass through, like light through a door that shouldn't open, like a dream that becomes real not by breaking the rules, but by gently folding them. Good night, the next door waits. Chapter 2. The Collapse of Certainty. There was a time when the world made sense, a time when nature was not a mystery but a machine, predictable, elegant, known. You could close your eyes and hear it. The slow, steady ticking of the cosmos, as if the stars themselves had gears hidden behind their shimmer. The moon followed its orbit with such grace, the tides rose and fell with such rhythm that it all felt written, as if the universe had been composed in sheet music, and at the centre of this harmony there stood a man with patient thoughts and careful hands, Isaac Newton. To him, the world was not chaos. It was a story written in the language of mathematics. A falling apple, a circling planet, a tossed stone, all followed rules. Rules you could trace, rules you could measure. In his hands, gravity became more than a feeling. It became a law. And the motion of the heavens, once explained with gods and guesswork, became something you could predict. And for centuries that law held. It stood like a lighthouse in the night, firm and unwavering. Newton's laws shaped every bridge built, every clock wound, every planet mapped. They were beautiful in their certainty. They were comforting. They told us that if we knew enough, if we looked closely enough, we could know everything. Certainty was not just a tool, it was a promise, a belief that the universe was fair, that it could be known in full if only we were smart enough, careful enough, precise enough. And in that world there was peace. But the world is not always what it seems, because deep beneath the surface of apples and planets, something else was stirring. A new whisper, a new question, a gentle tremble in the foundation of that certainty. And all it took was a little light, bending in the dark, to begin the undoing of everything we thought we knew. When light misbehaves, imagine a thin beam of light passing through a curtain. You've seen it before. Morning sunlight slipping between shutters, painting golden lines on a wooden floor. It feels soft, harmless, familiar. But what if that simple beam of light held a secret? What if, when asked the right question, it responded with something strange, something impossible? That question was asked through a simple experiment: 2 thin slits, a wall beyond them, and a source of light aimed through the slits, to see what would appear on the far side. Now, if light were made of little particles like tiny marbles, then the answer would be easy. 2 slits would make 2 lines on the wall, 2 simple, clean, predictable paths. But that's not what happened. Instead, a strange pattern appeared. Bands of brightness and shadow, a rhythm of light and dark, like ripples overlapping in a pond after you drop 2 stones in at once. This was not what anyone expected. The light was behaving like a wave, not like marbles, but like sound, like water, like music. It was interfering with itself, as though each photon of light was not taking one path, but both. And then the question grew deeper. What if, instead of a stream of light, we sent just one photon at a time, one tiny packet of light, alone? Still, the pattern appeared. Even with long pauses between them, the photons formed that same wave-like interference, as though they were not truly particles at all, but possibilities. Somewhere in the dark, reality had become uncertain. But the strangest part came next. Because when we watched the experiment, when we placed a detector to measure which slit each photon passed through, the pattern changed. It collapsed. The interference vanished. The wave became a particle. The two paths became one. The light stopped dancing.
And it was as if the act of observing changed the answer. As though, by looking, we had touched the very thread of being. As though the photon had waited, undecided, until it knew it was seen. This is where the crack in certainty widened. Because this wasn't just about light, this was about truth, about whether the world exists as it is, or only becomes what it is when we meet it. And once that door opened, the door between what is and what might be, it couldn't be closed again. The rise of uncertainty. In the early 20th century, the dream of a clockwork universe began to dissolve. Atoms, once thought to be solid and predictable, became something far stranger. Their pieces, electrons, protons, photons, began to act in ways that defied logic, that defied Newton. Into this strange new world stepped young minds, burning with curiosity. Werner Heisenberg, quiet and restless, began to see a truth no one had dared admit. You could not know everything, not at once, not even in principle. If you tried to measure the position of a particle with great precision, its momentum, its movement, would blur. If you focused on its momentum, its position would fade into uncertainty. The more you tried to know, the more you lost. This was not a flaw of the tools, it was a feature of nature itself. Uncertainty was not ignorance, it was reality. Erwin Schrödinger tried to understand it differently. He imagined the wave nature of particles, how each one might not be in a single place, but spread out like a mist across possibilities. A wave of potential, a haze of being. He wrote an equation, soft, complex and strange, that described how this wave evolved over time. It became a new kind of map, not of where a particle is, but where it might be. And then came the cat. The now famous thought experiment. A sealed box, a tiny particle, a trigger, a cat that might be alive or might not be. And until the box is opened, both are true. Not because the cat is magical, but because reality at that scale does not pick a side until it is touched. It sounds absurd. It sounds like nonsense. But this was the mathematics. This was the data. And this is what the world had become. Uncertainty was no longer a weakness, it was a doorway. And beyond it, a new kind of science waited. A new language for nature. There are times when old words are not enough. When the language we use to describe the world begins to fail. That's what happened when classical physics cracked open. It wasn't just a shift in science, it was a shift in imagination. To understand the new world, we had to learn to speak again. Gently, carefully, in a new tongue. Quantum mechanics. The words themselves feel cold, almost metallic, but the reality they describe is nothing of the sort. Quantum mechanics is not machinery, it is poetry and equations, it is a grammar of maybes and a syntax of silence. In its world, a particle is not a dot, it is a song, a wave of chances. It is both here and not here, it is what it might become. In this language, reality is not fixed, it is shaped by interaction, by connection, by attention. When something is watched, it behaves differently than when it is alone. Paranita. The universe, it seems, is not indifferent. It listens. And so every particle, every atom, every trembling field in the void is part of a web, not of things, but of relationships, not of facts, but of unfolding. This is hard to grasp because we are creatures of solidity. We believe in surfaces, in beginnings and endings, but deep within, at the scale where matter forgets its shape, everything softens. Everything glows with uncertainty. And yet, from this quantum cloud, all things arise. Every heartbeat, every sunrise, every grain of sand and every distant moon. It is not a flaw in the system, it is the system. A world built not of certainty, but of becoming. And you are not separate from it. You are not an outsider looking in. You are part of this delicate unfolding. Your thoughts, your choices, your gaze, they all touch the web. And in the quiet of night, when your breath slows and your mind drifts, you feel it, that shimmer beneath the known. The place where perhaps lives, where mystery breathes, where the rules bend into beauty. Let yourself rest here. Let the laws of logic soften around you. Let the clock stop ticking, not in fear, but in wonder. Because beyond certainty, there is something richer. There is curiosity. There is awe. There is the soft, infinite hush of possibility. And tonight the universe is not asking you to solve it. It's inviting you to feel it. To drift, not through answers, but through questions. To fall asleep not with closure, but with wonder. Chapter 3, The Tunneling Phenomenon. There is a rule you have always known, written deep into the structure of the waking world, that things stay where they are, unless given enough force to move, that a hill must be climbed, not slipped through, that a wall must be broken or circled. These are the laws of momentum, of motion, of cause and effect, the sturdy bones of classical life. You can feel this in your body as you press against resistance, in your daily life as you plan and push and try. But beneath that structure, in the soft silence of the quantum world, there is a stranger story unfolding. One not of breaking or forcing, but of leaking. Imagine a particle, not a thing you can hold or see, but more like a shimmer, a whisper of possibility. It moves toward a barrier. This wall should be impossible to cross. It is too high, too wide, too well guarded by the laws of classical energy. And yet, when we look again, the particle is not stopped. It is somewhere on the other side. No crash, no climb, just arrival. This is quantum tunneling. A mystery that breaks no laws, because it is not part of the world where those laws apply. In the stillness of subatomic space, particles sometimes do what should be impossible. They pass through barriers not by force, but by presence. As if their nature includes not just where they are, but where they might be. As if reality itself allows them to seep like mist through cracks that do not exist. Tunneling is not an accident. It is a rule of its own, one that reveals the strange softness of the universe beneath its sharp edges. And it happens all the time. In the fusion heart of the sun, tunneling allows atoms to reach one another, to touch, to become something new. Without it, our star would never shine, our breath would not rise, our hearts would not beat. Here in this quiet chapter of your night, imagine not the world you know, but the one just beneath it, where barriers are suggestions and even the smallest being can slip softly beyond the limits that held it, where presence is not confined to place and certainty gives way to wonder. The mathematics of mystery. To know this world more deeply, you must enter its language, not of sound or speech, but of shapes, waves, and quiet curves of probability. The particle you imagine is not a point on a map, but a blur, a gentle hill of possibility rising and falling called a wave function. It is not saying, this is where the particle is, but rather, this is where the particle could be. It is like watching moonlight on the surface of a lake. It flickers in many places at once, and none of them is wrong. The wave function is not a guess, it is mathematics, but not the kind that cuts or commands. It is the math of mystery, of clouds and unfolding petals and silk falling in slow motion. It allows physicists to trace not the path of a particle, but the rhythm of its becoming. to see how likely it is to rise in one place, to fall in another, to disappear and then quietly bloom again. When that wave function meets a barrier, a hill of energy too steep to climb, it does not stop. It simply begins to fade, to thin, to stretch its whisper into the forbidden region. And though most of its being dies away at the wall, a soft tail lingers. And beyond the other side, where there should be silence, a small echo rises again, faint but real, a mathematical bloom in soil that should not allow it. Point. This is not just poetry. It is the architecture of the universe. A formula known as Schrödinger's equation draws the contours of this wave, a gentle commandment for how the possible dances with the real. The solution to that equation, when faced with a barrier, always shows the same thing: a leak, a ghost of presence appearing where classical law says it should not. And so, in the midnight quiet of the quantum realm, a new kind of story is written. One not of force and fracture, but of unfolding. Not of conquest, but of permission. In the tender mathematics of the wave function, we find a world where particles don't break the rules. They simply belong to a different song. A probability that walks. And now, imagine the miracle more clearly. A particle approaches a hill it cannot climb, not because it lacks will, but because the rules say no. It pauses, as if listening, and then, without noise, without fight, it is elsewhere. This is not teleportation, it is not magic, it is probability in motion. A walk not through space, but through potential. Tunneling is a dance of uncertainty, choreographed by the laws of quantum life. The particle is never fully here, nor fully there. It is a presence smeared across outcomes, like ink across thin paper. You cannot say it is in one place until you look, and by looking, you freeze it into being. But before you do, it is everywhere its wave function allows. Sometimes, when the hill is thin and the wave function is brave, a piece of that presence makes it through. Not often, not always, but enough. Enough for nuclear fusion to occur in stars. Enough for the memory chips in your computer to switch states. Enough for life to rise, evolve, and wonder. Think of it this way. You are walking in a dream, and before you stands a wall. In waking life you would stop, but in dreams you often do not notice the wall. You drift forward and somehow you are on the other side. This is tunneling. Not brute force, not illusion, but a statistical kindness built into the fabric of the very small. At these scales, the world is less about what is and more about what might be. The particle does not force its way through. It waits. It listens to its own uncertainty. And when the numbers align, when the probabilities shimmer just right, it steps softly beyond. A probability that walks. A maybe that becomes real. Beyond the wall. So what happens after the miracle? After the wave function fades through the hill and a particle emerges on the other side of something it could never pass in the ordinary world. It does not look back. It does not leave a trail. It simply exists. Quietly. As if it had always been there. As if the wall was only a suggestion. This is the part that soothes, that sings. The universe does not resist you the way you think it does. Sometimes what looks like an end is not an edge, but a veil. A soft limit, porous to possibility. Not every wall must be climbed. Some you pass through by being willing to be uncertain, to be fluid, to allow yourself to leak into the next version of what you are. This is not just a fact of physics, it is a metaphor for life. For the moments when you feel trapped, walled in by fear, grief, or exhaustion. What if the barrier is not a block, but a place where your wave function fades and then rises again softly somewhere else? Quantum tunneling teaches us that the universe is not entirely rigid, that even in its most fundamental forms it allows grace, a kind of mathematical mercy, a rule that says you do not always need to break through. Sometimes you can just appear. So as your breath slows tonight, and the weight of the day releases its grip, think of the particle that rests where it should not be, not in defiance, but in quiet permission. It is not alone. It is part of a world that is kinder, stranger, and more open than you were told. Close your eyes. Drift like a wave function, soft, uncertain, and full of possibility. The walls you see may not be final. The limits may not be what they seem. And you too may find yourself softly beyond the wall. Chapter 4. The Sun's Forbidden Fire. GT word count 2000 words. Point. Fusion at the edge. Far above you the sky glows with a light you've always known. It reaches you across the emptiness, brushing your skin, your eyelids, your thoughts. It rises each morning with such steady calm that it feels eternal. But the sun, as constant as it seems, hides a quiet rebellion. It shines not because it obeys the rules, but because something deep inside it dares to disobey, or rather dares to bend the rules gently, in the strange soft way only quantum nature allows. Inside the sun's heart, where heat and pressure are unimaginable, tiny particles drift and dance. These particles, protons, are like puzzle pieces that should not fit. Each one carries a positive electric charge, and like magnets flipped the wrong way, they push each other away. This repulsion is called the Coulomb barrier, a wall made not of stone or fire, but of force, a barrier built by the laws of classical physics. It says, you may not pass. And yet in the core of the sun, particles pass through anyway. They don't crash into each other with force alone. Not even the furnace of the sun is enough. Instead, they tunnel, not through rock, but through the invisible landscape of possibility. They slip beneath the barrier like mist curling beneath a door. A whisper of probability makes it through. A chance becomes a moment becomes a spark, and that spark becomes fusion. Two protons, against all odds, merge. They become something new. They release energy, warmth, and light. And that light takes thousands of years to rise from the sun's core to its surface, and just 8 minutes to reach your cheek on a summer morning. All of it, from the golden glow on water to the heat on your skin, began with particles doing what they should not be able to do. In this, the sun is a story of softness, not of explosions, but of quiet trespass. A star shines because its smallest pieces know how to walk through walls, because the universe, at its heart, allows the impossible to become real. The life of stars. Drift now into the heart of the cosmos. Stars are not rare. They bloom across the sky like seeds scattered in a wind too vast to name. Each one a sun, each one alive in its own glowing way, and yet every single one, from the smallest flicker to the largest burning giant, shares the same secret. It exists because quantum tunneling exists. Imagine a star being born. A cloud of gas collapses under its own weight, pulled inward by gravity's slow and patient hand. As it falls, it heats. As it heats, atoms begin to dance faster, but no matter how hot they become, the classical rules insist, protons must repel. They are like children told to stay apart, always pushing away, always refusing to touch. But in the quantum world, the rules are written in suggestion, not certainty. Each proton is not a point, but a probability, a wave function, a presence that spreads. And when two wave functions overlap just enough, tunneling becomes possible. A ghost of one proton slips through the barrier of another. They merge, they fuse, and the star is born in truth, not from gravity, not from fire, but from a mathematical softness that allows what should be forbidden. This fusion fuels the star's life. It is the source of all heat, all light, all motion. Without tunneling, stars would be cold and still. The universe would be a gallery of silent stones drifting in shadow. And so, as you gaze at the night sky, or let its memory settle behind your eyes as you rest, remember this: each star you see is a monument to the maybe, a beacon made not from strength, but from the patient miracle of uncertainty. Thank you for watching. To give you a long word, energy from ghost steps. What does it mean really to walk through a wall? To take a step where no door exists? In the quantum world, this is not rebellion, it is nature. Tunneling is not rare, it is constant, invisible, It is happening right now in the heart of every glowing star. Particles are taking ghost steps, gentle statistical movements into spaces they were never allowed to go. And from these steps a universe of light is born. You live inside the reach of that light. Every breath you take is warmed by it. Every meal you eat is fed by it. The chlorophyll in leaves, the golden wheat in fields, the rhythm of seasons, all of it begins with sunlight. And all sunlight begins with tunneling. No collision is strong enough on its own. The stars do not burn from force but from patience, from the long, slow probability of ghost steps taken in silence, from particles waiting for their chance to slip through. And when they do not shout. They become energy, radiance, warmth. Think of that. All the colour you see by day, all the warmth you feel on your skin, all the glowing embers in your memories. They are the result of particles stepping quietly into the impossible and finding themselves allowed. It is as if the universe at its smallest scales is not a fortress but a field. One where possibilities bloom if you wait long enough, and where energy is not only released by violence, but by grace. The glow of the impossible. Let this truth settle softly now. The fire that gives you life is not a blaze of rage, but a shimmer of impossibility made real. The light that feeds the trees, the warmth that melts the snow, the golden beams that stretch across oceans at dusk, they are all children of quantum kindness. Without tunneling, there would be no photosynthesis, no green, no food, no growth. The entire chain of life on Earth, from single cells to your sleeping heartbeat, is lit by the improbable, by the gentle breaking of barriers that should not be passable. The sun is not just a ball of plasma. It is a mystery lantern, an ancient miracle repeating itself each moment. Its core is a quiet forge, where ghostly steps of protons become waves of light. That light travels through space and time, brushing over moons, mountains, and skin until it reaches you, right now. A gift from the heart of an impossible star. And you, like the particles inside the sun, are also made of chances. You are the outcome of waves and probabilities, of stories that could have turned out differently, but didn't. Somehow, through the silence of countless barriers, you emerged. Like light from a tunnel, like warmth through a whisper. So let yourself glow gently in the dark. Let your breath rise and fall like the waves of possibility themselves. The same universe that allows tunneling allows you. The same force that lights the stars lights your life. And maybe, just maybe, nothing is truly impossible at all. Chapter 5. The Ghost in the Atom. Get word count, 2,000 words. The nucleus as cage. At the heart of every atom lies a silence so heavy it feels eternal. Not the silence of absence, but of pressure, of forces locked in place. This is the nucleus, a fortress more ancient than stars, wrapped tight by the strong nuclear force. And within this chamber, so dense and still, there exists a quiet prisoner, the alpha particle. It does not roam, it does not rebel, it waits, humming faintly with energy, a creature of possibility sealed within an invisible boundary. You can imagine it like this. A tiny sphere, wrapped in unseen tension, holding inside it a cluster of protons and neutrons, bound together with such ferocity that even light struggles to move through it. The alpha particle, made of 2 protons and 2 neutrons, resides here, not as an outsider, but as a potential that cannot yet unfold. It is held by a wall that is not made of stone, but of force, of potential energy stacked like an insurmountable cliff. It vibrates faintly, softly brushing against the invisible edges of its cage, unable to leap but forever dreaming of escape. There is no door, no key, no crack in the foundation. To the human eye, to even the most powerful machine, the alpha particle appears still, perfectly confined within the nucleus. But inside that stillness lives a whisper of something else, a sliver of chance that defies what we think is possible. This is not a prison in the way you know it. This is quantum confinement, and the walls are made not of matter but of maybes, and still, impossibly, some of them vanish. From inside the cage, without warning, the alpha particle disappears and reappears on the other side. Not broken, not damaged, simply free. Escape without force. How do you escape a cage without touching it? How do you leave without pushing open a door or digging beneath the walls? In a quantum world, escape does not require force, it requires probability and patience. The alpha particle doesn't erupt from the nucleus. There is no sudden explosion, no blazing trail, no shattering sound. Instead, the escape is quiet, soft, impossibly smooth. One moment, the particle is inside. The next, it exists outside, as though it has passed through the barrier not by breaking it, but by blending into it. The transition is seamless, like a mist drifting through a forest wall. This is quantum tunneling. You see, in our everyday world, particles must climb hills, overcome barriers, push with force. But in the quantum world, particles are not pinpoints. They are waves spread out, shimmering possibilities. And sometimes that wave stretches far enough to touch the other side of the wall. Not because it crashes through, but because it already exists there in potential. It is as though the alpha particle gently fades into the barrier and emerges again on the other side, like a ghost walking through stone or a memory passing through thought. It does not resist the wall, it becomes part of it, however briefly, and reappears on the far side, free, flying, drifting into the space beyond the atom. This tunneling is not random chaos, it is governed by deep and delicate laws. The width of the wall, the energy of the particle, the shape of the potential, they all influence the probability, but the escape is never forced. It is granted through chance, through softness, and while it may seem miraculous, this quiet jailbreak is not rare. It happens all the time. Right now, as you breathe, countless atoms in your body and in the soil beneath you are gently decaying. Not with violence, but with grace. They are releasing particles through unseen doors, letting them go like sighs in the night. It is the most intimate form of transformation. Invisible, constant, calm. The clock of the atom. How long does it take for a particle to escape its nuclear cage? That question doesn't have a simple answer. Not because we don't know, but because the atom doesn't work like a ticking watch. It doesn't measure time in minutes or seconds, it speaks in probabilities. Each radioactive atom carries a hidden rhythm, not a countdown, but a waiting game of chance. This rhythm is measured by what we call a half-life, the time it takes for half of a group of atoms to decay. Some half-lives are short, lasting less than a blink. Others stretch across eons, older than the Earth itself. Picture a field of atoms, each one a fortress with a dreaming prisoner inside. None of them know when they'll tunnel through the wall. They only know the likelihood, the statistical rhythm by which freedom might come. It is like watching stars twinkle, never sure which will fade next, but knowing, over time, the sky will change. For example, polonium-214 has a half-life of just 164 microseconds, a frantic dance where the particles leap almost as soon as they are born. Uranium-238, on the other hand, waits 4.5 billion years, a silence so long it echoes back to the beginning of Earth. This clock isn't loud, it isn't visible, but it runs everywhere. In your bones, potassium atoms decay gently, releasing particles that pass through you like soft ripples in a pond. In the heart of the Earth, radioactive decay warms the mantle, feeding the slow churn of tectonic plates. In ancient stars, it drives fusion, keeps heat alive. The clocks of the atom are not meant to be heard, they are meant to be felt in the weight of mountains, in the time it takes for oceans to rise, in the slow unfolding of life. They measure not hours, but possibility. They remind us that even in the tightest spaces, change is always waiting. A dance in the dark. What then is decay? Is it the end? The collapse? Or could it be something gentler? A movement so subtle it looks like stillness? The alpha particle, once released, floats free. It may travel great distances or come to rest in nearby soil. It may enter a living cell, join the dance of chemical bonds, or simply drift in space. Wherever it goes, it carries with it a trace of that silent escape, the soft miracle of having passed through an impossible wall. These transformations are not isolated, they ripple outward, they shape planets, power stars, and whisper through our cells. The warmth of the Earth's core? It comes from decay, the glow of an ancient rock, that too. Even the age of fossils, calculated by measuring carbon decay, relies on this invisible dance. So often, we think of change as noise, as explosion, as chaos. But in a quantum world, change is a whisper. It happens not with noise, but with grace. It is particles slipping through curtains, like shadows fading into morning. And perhaps this is the quiet lesson hidden in the atom, that we too are always becoming. We too tunnel through walls we cannot see, sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once, but always we move, not toward destruction, but toward transformation. As you close your eyes tonight, let that thought settle into your breath. Beneath the skin, beneath the stars, beneath the silence of your thoughts, the universe is changing. Not in violence, not in fear, but in possibility. Quiet, constant, soft as sleep. Let the ghost in the atom remind you. Nothing is ever truly stuck. Even in the smallest prison, even under the deepest weight, there is always a way through. And so you rest, held in the rhythm of particles gently becoming, walls turning to mist, barriers becoming paths, a dance in the dark, where everything eventually becomes something new. Chapter 6. A world built on tunnels. In the quiet heart of every living thing, reactions stir and settle. Bonds are made and broken in whispers, not with noise or crash, but in soft transitions too small to see. These are the chemical dances of life, where molecules meet, part, and rearrange in delicate rhythms. And in this hushed theatre, something invisible lends a hand, something ancient and strange, something that breaks no walls, yet opens every door. You might not see it, but quantum tunneling is there, slipping softly beneath the surface of every living spark. To understand it, picture a stream that should be too weak to carve through stone, yet somehow it flows beyond the boulder in its way, not around, not over, but through. In the world of molecules, energy often seems too low to complete the reaction, too gentle to overcome the barrier, and yet, the reaction happens. Bonds still change, life still breathes. This is not force, it is tunneling, the art of becoming what cannot be reached, the quiet shortcut of the quantum world. Now consider enzymes, nature's master craftsmen. They guide and shape reactions with elegance. But more than that, they open portals. These biological catalysts don't just lower barriers, they create conditions where tunneling becomes likely. They fold molecules into precise shapes, align atoms like stones across a river, and hold the tension long enough for something magical to occur. Inside the warmth of every cell, enzymes invite particles to do what they shouldn't be able to do, to tunnel, to transform, to move forward without crossing the mountain. This is not a rare trick, it happens in you right now. In your blood, in your breath, in the blink of a nerve firing or the healing of a wound. At the centre of it all is this hidden helper, quantum tunneling, called forth by the hands of enzymes whispering its way into the core of life's design. Hydrogen's leap. Among all the dancers in this quiet quantum waltz, none is more graceful or more mysterious than the hydrogen atom. Light, essential, ancient, it moves more like a ghost than a guest. And in the hidden rooms of your cells, hydrogen performs one of nature's most curious acts. It tunnels. Hydrogen is made of a single proton and a single electron, making it the simplest atom, and in many ways the most agile. It is so small, so light, that it flutters on the edge of probability. When it faces a barrier too wide for classical crossing, it does not turn back, it does not force its way forward. It simply fades through, not in defiance of the rules, but because the rules of the quantum world are written in softness and chance. In your DNA, the very blueprint of who you are, hydrogen bonding holds a spiral together. The rungs of the double helix, those gentle twisting steps, depend on hydrogen's position, on its willingness to link one side to the other. But sometimes it moves, not through heat, not through push, but through tunneling. It leaps from one side to the other, shifting the structure, rewriting a letter in the code of life. This leap can cause a mutation, a change, perhaps subtle, perhaps profound. One hydrogen atom tunnels across a molecular divide, and suddenly a base pair reads differently. Sometimes this is nothing. Sometimes it is evolution, sometimes it is illness, but always it is part of the quiet play of probabilities that shapes all living things. You are the result of such leaps. Not just in the past, but now. As cells divide, as memories form, as healing begins. Hydrogen's dance continues. It is not chaos, it is the soft music of change, played in a key so delicate, only the universe itself can hear. Life's quantum shortcuts. If you listen closely to the way life moves, you'll begin to notice it. The speed, the fluency, the impossibility of it all. Molecules react with purpose. Signals travel across nerves with precision. Energy shifts hands like dancers in a line. And at the core of this flow is something older than time. The quantum shortcut. Tunneling is not disorder. It is not randomness in the wild sense. It is structured uncertainty, a probabilistic path carved through the maze of impossibility. And life, in all its complexity, leans on these invisible roads. Contact colocist, contact gazonia. Inside the chloroplasts of leaves, tunneling helps harvest light. In the deepest cells of your brain, it may assist in how you perceive a scent, or how electrons travel across tiny protein wires. Even the way enzymes function, shaping the fate of sugars, fats and amino acids, depends on tunneling to keep time with the tempo of survival. These shortcuts do not mean life is reckless, they mean life is wise. Instead of brute force, it uses what is already there. Uncertainty. It allows for the particle to become a wave, for the wall to become a possibility, for the journey to be taken not through resistance but through softness. This is a kind of trust, a biological faith in the rules beneath the rules, that even when the path looks blocked, another way might quietly open, that the miracle lies not in breaking through, but in gently disappearing and reappearing where one is needed most. So much of what lives because of this, because particles move where they shouldn't, because nature plays with possibility, because life takes the quietest route and reaches its destination all the same. Nature's invisible architecture. And now, let us take a step back. Let us look not at the single atom or reaction, but at the whole canvas. What do we see? A world shaped by tunnels, not carved by tools, but written in laws that favour softness over strength. A design built not with brick and beam, but with probability and grace. Everywhere you look, in roots reaching downward, in stars collapsing to birth new light, in the curve of your fingers or the quiet in your chest, tunneling is there. Not seen, not heard, but felt in the way things happen more smoothly than they should, faster than they ought, with more elegance than equations predict. This is not accident, this is architecture. Nature has built its cathedral with unseen arches, with secret stairways that only particles can walk. Every enzyme, every molecule, every living strand of code uses this blueprint. A hydrogen leap, a proton slide, an electron's disappearing act. To live in this world is to be part of it, to be shaped by it. You too are built on tunnels. You too are the outcome of invisible decisions taken long before you were aware. You are composed of ancient shortcuts and quiet gifts. And so, as you lie here tonight, surrounded by stars, cradled by air, held by the softness of sleep, remember this: the universe is not hard edges and cold stone. It is not ruled by only push and pull. Beneath the surface, it is tunnels. Tunnels that break no walls, but carry everything forward. Tunnels that make life not just possible, but beautiful. Let that truth hold you, let it settle in your chest. You are a traveller of these quiet paths. You are made of gentle leaps and sacred probability, and tonight, The world breathes softly through the architecture you cannot see but are part of, always. Sleep now, wrapped in the invisible design of life's quietest miracles. The shortcuts are still working, the particles are still tunneling, and the universe, beneath your thoughts, is still unfolding through doors no one can see. Chapter 7. Machines that listen to tunnels. There is a kind of seeing that does not require eyes, a kind of touch that never breaks the surface. In the quiet world of quantum mechanics, this kind of perception is real. It's how we explore the unseen, not by shining brighter lights or building larger lenses, but by listening to whispers that echo through tunnels no one else can enter. And one of the first tools to hear these whispers is the scanning tunneling microscope. It stands not as a towering machine, but as a delicate instrument, fine enough to trace the contours of atoms. But it doesn't see in the way you might expect. It doesn't shine, it doesn't poke, it hovers. A needle, so fine its tip ends in a single atom, floats just above a surface, impossibly close, like a breath away. And from that gap, that nearly invisible distance, comes something extraordinary. A tunnel. Electrons leap between the tip and the surface, not across empty space, but through it, tunneling, as if the vacuum were a bridge and not a barrier. The flow of these tunneling electrons changes depending on the shape of the surface below, the hills and valleys of atomic landscapes. As the needle glides across the material, measuring these subtle currents, a map begins to form. Not just of molecules or structures, but of individual atoms. Shapes emerge, ridges take form, valleys deepen. You're not just seeing atoms, you're feeling them, without ever truly touching. It's as if you're reading the texture of the world with your shadow. And this was one of the first moments humanity realized. We can listen to tunnels. We can turn quantum softness into scientific sight. The scanning tunneling microscope opened a door not just into the structure of matter, but into the poetry of perception itself. A reminder that sometimes the gentlest approach reveals the most profound truths. Digital tunnels now step into another realm, not one of looking, but of thinking, of speed, language, and memory. This is the world of electronics. And deep beneath every screen you've ever touched, every device that connects thought to action, there lives a secret current that flows through tunnels too small to see. Transistors, the switches at the heart of all computers, are shrinking. So small now, so fine, that they've entered the domain of the quantum. The paths they open and close for electrons are so narrow, the electrons no longer wait for permission. They tunnel. They vanish and reappear where they shouldn't be able to go. And this, once a problem, has become a tool. Imagine electrons no longer walking but slipping, not forced through but allowed through by probability. As you type, scroll, or speak into your phone, as your computer calculates or your camera captures light, it's quantum tunneling that helps make these actions real. There's something beautiful in that. The speed of modern life, the instant messages, the music that streams, the data that dances across the world. It is powered not just by silicon and code, but by tunnels, by electrons that choose the improbable path and find a way through. And yet, it's quiet. You don't hear them, you don't feel the electrons leap, but they leap anyway. Billions of them, every moment, in rhythm with your thoughts, your dreams, your designs. They move across gates that no longer need to open, only exist. They are digital ghosts, making our machines not just faster, but dreamlike, powered by absence, by chance, by quantum grace. Quantum dots and conductors. As the tools grow smaller, the dreams grow larger. In the world of nanotechnology, where materials are sculpted at the scale of atoms, tunneling becomes more than a curiosity. It becomes a craft. And among the most luminous of these tiny wonders are quantum dots. Tiny crystals, smaller than a virus, quantum dots shimmer not because of what they are, but because of how electrons behave inside them. Their size traps electrons like a jar traps fireflies, not by force but by structure, And within this jar, tunneling plays its magic. Light, colour and charge all shift depending on how electrons tunnel within and between these dots. A small change in spacing can alter the colour of the glow. A slight tweak in energy and the material becomes a sensor, a switch or a gate. This is light sculpted by chance, not scattered, but guided through invisible paths. Now imagine conductors so thin they're called quantum wires. Layers so thin they're just a few atoms tall. In these landscapes, tunneling determines everything, whether current flows, whether heat rises, whether a material becomes transparent or opaque, alive or asleep. The very rules of matter twist slightly under the hand of tunneling, and scientists are learning to guide them with care. It's as if nature has offered us a new kind of language, a grammar written in probability, a syntax shaped by silence. And we are just beginning to read it. These nanoscale tools aren't just new gadgets, they are whispers from the future. Promises that light and matter can dance together more intimately, that sensors can hear more softly, that machines can listen more deeply to the tunnels beneath the skin of the world. The bridged quantum tech, and now we arrive at the edge, the boundary where machines begin to dream, where computation stops being binary and becomes quantum. And again, at the heart of it all is tunneling. Quantum computers are not just faster machines, they are different machines, built not on bits, but on qubits. These qubits do not simply sit in on or off positions, they blur, they overlap. They exist in both states, and none until they are observed. And tunneling is part of this blur. In some quantum architectures, qubits are made of tiny superconducting circuits, in others trapped atoms or photons. But in all cases, tunneling helps define the transitions between states, the gentle nudges between yes and no, between possibilities still sleeping. Tunneling allows information to move, not as steps on a ladder, but as leaps across a gap. These machines don't compute by counting, but by dreaming, by allowing all possibilities to exist, softly, until the final one emerges. The logic is no longer linear, it's woven, and tunneling is one of the threads. This is more than just speed, it's more than memory. It's a different way of knowing, a way that mirrors the deep structure of the universe, where cause and effect are softened, where walls shimmer, and paths appear where none should exist. And though true quantum computers are still young, still fragile, they hint at a future where machines don't just follow logic, they follow possibility. A future where data flows through tunnels we've only just begun to see, where every calculation is a conversation between now and what might be. As you drift into sleep, imagine that world, not loud or blinking, but soft and humming. A world where thought passes not through wires but through silence, where answers come not from pushing but from listening, where machines don't just compute but commune with the quantum heart of reality. Let that vision carry you. Let the tunnels open in your imagination. You live in a world shaped by things that slip through, by whispers that machines can now hear, and by possibilities that have always been just beneath the surface. Sleep easy now, knowing that, even in our most advanced creations, we are still following the rules of softness, of stillness, of quiet leaps. We are still listening to tunnels. Chapter 8. When Tunnels Defy Time. Close your eyes. Feel time slow in your chest, the hush between heartbeats, the breath suspended at the edge of sleep. Now imagine something smaller than anything you've ever known, something lighter than thought, caught in a place where time does not behave. This is quantum tunneling, but not just in space. Tonight, we drift into the mystery of its time. In our waking world, time is a path, one step after another, a string of seconds, each one steady, measurable, true. But in the quantum world, time becomes mist. It shifts, it hides, it refuses to be pinned down, and when a particle tunnels, when it moves from one side of a barrier to the other, through a wall it shouldn't cross, the question lingers. How long does it take? The answer is strange. Some experiments suggest that it happens instantly, that the particle blinks through the wall in less time than light itself would need. Others say it takes no time at all, that it never travels the way we expect. It simply exists on the other side. You are listening now to a moment that may not exist, a whisper in the space between cause and effect, a crossing without a step. It is a motion that carries no trail, leaves no footprints, casts no shadow in time, and yet it changes everything. A shift has occurred, the particle has moved. The world is not the same. This is not just curiosity, it's a kind of soft rebellion. For the laws of physics we know, even the ones that govern light, suggest limits, but tunneling defies them. Not by breaking rules, but by stepping around them, like fog curling around a branch. It's not that the particle moves faster than light, but that the rules of motion don't apply in the same way. The tunnel, in its strange softness, may not be a place where time flows at all. Attoseconds and attoclocks. And yet, scientists still try to catch it. They build tools so fast, so sensitive, they can blink with time itself. They use pulses of light that last only attoseconds, a billionth of a second, just to see if tunneling can be timed, just to ask, how long does the ghost spend inside the wall? The attoclock is one such device. Not a clock you wear or mount on a wall, but a pattern of swirling light. It's used to mark the briefest moment when a particle begins to tunnel. Like a sunbeam shaped into a spiral, it spins time itself into a tool. In these experiments, a laser pulses with unimaginable quickness, sending particles toward potential barriers. Then, by measuring the angle of escape, scientists try to reconstruct the delay, to trace the shadow of time that might be hiding in the tunnel. The results are puzzling. The measurements are delicate. Some say the particle spends a small, that finite amount of time within the barrier. Others suggest it slips through too quickly to measure, as if it touches neither the start nor the end, but simply becomes both at once. This pursuit, this dance with seconds that barely exist, is a kind of poetry, a way of asking nature not just what happens, but when. A way of pressing our ear to the surface of the quantum world and listening for a tick, a heartbeat that may not be there. And yet, the attosecond tools still hum, still pulse, still search. Because even if tunneling cheats time, even if it floats outside the ordinary river of moments, it leaves ripples. And in those ripples, we find wonder. And quote, does the particle wait? Now, lean into the question. Rest your mind against it like a stone warmed by the sun. When a particle tunnels, is it in the wall? Is it somewhere? Is it waiting? You might picture it like this. The particle stands before a mountain. It does not climb. It does not blast through. Instead, it disappears and then reappears beyond. So, what happens in between? Some say the particle is a wave, stretched thin, overlapping the mountain, existing in a blur between here and there. Others suggest it's not in the tunnel at all, not truly. That the act of tunneling is not a journey, but a flicker of probability collapsing into being. But what does the particle feel? If it had awareness, would it know the weight? Would it sense the barrier? Or would the shift feel sudden, timeless, like waking from a dream you didn't know you had? This is where physics leans into philosophy, where measurement meets mystery. The particle is not a marble rolling across a floor, it is a question, and the tunnel is its uncertain answer. And still, something crosses. Something changes. It is not nothing. It is not empty. A presence moves through absence. A potential becomes real. As you breathe here, resting in this moment, know that particles all around you, in your body, in the air, in the earth, are tunneling. Quietly. Constantly. Not just through space, but perhaps through the softest folds of time. They do not wait in the way we do. They do not mark minutes or hours. Their journey is written in probabilities, not paths. And yet, they reach the other side. Perhaps the lesson is not to ask how long, but to marvel that the crossing happens at all. Moments that vanish. And now, let it settle. Let the question float softly into the night. What does it mean for something to happen without time? In our world, every action seems wrapped in minutes. You speak, and then a sound travels. You think, and then you act. There is always a before, always an after. Time holds us like water holds a fish. Ungados, but tunneling hints at something else. A realm where before and after become shadows, where motion is real, but the steps are missing. A world of moments that vanish, not because they were never there, but because they refuse to leave a mark. It is hard to grasp, but not impossible to feel. You've had moments like this. The way sleep arrives without you noticing. The way a memory suddenly returns without warning. The way a decision feels made before you even think it. These are tunneling moments, soft, silent crossings between states, between selves, between the known and the not yet known. In the quantum world, these vanishings are not accidents, they are structure, they are law. Tunneling is not a glitch, it is a thread woven into the fabric of being, a reminder that not all change is measured in seconds, not all journeys leave footprints. And so, as you drift deeper into stillness, let yourself dissolve into this truth. There are paths you will take that cannot be timed. There are changes you will undergo that will feel sudden but have always been waiting. There are walls you will pass through not by force, but by simply becoming what lies on the other side. Sleep now, not in the grip of time, but in its gentle release. Let go of clocks, let go of counting, let the world blur, let the moments vanish. Because sometimes, the most miraculous things happen when time forgets to keep track. When particles move through tunnels that don't take time. When you close your eyes and find yourself already there. Chapter 9. The Uncertainty Within. Let's begin with a soft question. Not to answer, but to float beside you as you rest. Can you ever truly know what a particle is doing in the moment it tunnels? In your day-to-day world, knowing something feels simple. You look, you listen, you measure, you describe. A ball rolls, a clock ticks, a bird lands and you witness it. Location, time, motion, all accounted for. But in the quiet, humming world beneath the visible, the rules bend. The more you try to know, the less you can be certain. Here, in the quantum underworld, the particle becomes a mist. It has no fixed place, no precise speed. It holds not a single truth, but a spread of possibilities. This isn't just a limitation of our tools, it's written into nature itself, a principle at the very heart of being: uncertainty. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is not a glitch. It is a shield, a veil. It says, if you know a particle's position with great precision, you cannot know its momentum with equal clarity. And if you focus on the momentum, the position slips away. Now think of tunneling, that soft, improbable escape from one side of a barrier to the other. It happens within this fog of uncertainty. The particle doesn't sit and wait, like a traveller at a gate. It hovers across the boundary, existing in a space that cannot be pinned down. To ask where is it or how fast is it going is to miss the point, because those questions collapse the tunnel. They replace the dream with a single detail, and the dream is where tunneling lives. So you don't really see the particle tunnel, you feel the outcome. It was there, and now it's here. The path between is veiled by the fundamental softness of the quantum world, a world that holds, deep within it, a kind of sacred unknowability. Let that thought rest with you, let it breathe in your chest. The universe is not made only of facts, it is also made of questions that never settle, of patterns that shimmer, of knowledge that retreats the closer you come. Looking changes everything. Now, let's lean into the light, the gentle act of observation. In your world, to observe is passive. You look out the window and the stars do not change. You open a book and the words remain. But at the smallest scales of existence, to observe is to touch. To measure is to disturb. Looking changes everything. This is not metaphor, it is truth. When you try to observe a particle, to measure its location, its energy, its tunneling path, your act of watching reshapes the scene. It is like shining a flashlight into fog. The very beam that helps you see also disperses what you're trying to view. In tunneling, this becomes especially delicate. A particle prepares to pass through a barrier, a silent crossing that depends on possibility, not certainty. But if you try to catch it mid-flight, to know exactly where it is in the tunnel, you collapse the probabilities. The act of watching shifts the conditions. The very tunnel may close. You might imagine a bird perched in darkness ready to fly. If you flood the room with light to see its wings, the bird may stay still. Not because it was never going to fly, but because your light changed its choice. In some experiments, even a weak attempt at observation reduces tunneling. A small nudge of measurement makes the particle hesitate, reroute, behave differently than it might have in silence. This isn't magic. It's a reflection of how delicately quantum systems balance possibility. There's a gentle humility in that. In the realization that our presence, even our curiosity, is not neutral. That to ask a question of the quantum world is to place your hand on the scale. The answers come not in clear declarations, but in quiet echoes, altered by the asking. So perhaps, instead of watching too closely, we must learn to listen, to accept that some knowledge arrives only when we step back, when we trust the world to unfold without interruption. Measure with shadows. If you've ever tried to remember a dream and found it dissolving as you reached for it, then you already know something about quantum measurement. It's like chasing shadows with your fingers. The more you reach, the more it slips. Tunneling is one of those dreams. We know it happens, we see its traces, a particle on one side and then on the other. But we never catch the crossing. We never see the particle in the wall, in the tunnel, in the act. So how do we measure it? With shadows, with echoes, with changes that hint softly at what must have occurred. In radioactive decay, we detect the particles that emerge after tunneling. In scanning microscopes, we sense the current that flows because of electrons tunneling through space. In ultrafast experiments, we measure patterns that suggest how long or how briefly tunneling might have taken. But none of these measurements sees the act directly. They are outlines, reflections. Like footprints on wet ground, they tell us something passed through, but not what it looked like in the moment. This is where quantum physics begins to feel like art. We learn not from photographs, but from brushstrokes, from texture, from resonance. And yet, even in the absence of direct sight, the truth of tunneling remains vivid. It shapes stars, it drives life, it powers your devices, it sings quietly beneath every atom. The quiet places of science. And now, let us slow even further. Let us sit at the edge of knowing, not to leap across, but to dwell in the quiet that surrounds it. Science, at its deepest, is not only about discovery. It is about reverence. It is about listening to what cannot be measured, not as failure, but as beauty. Tunneling reminds us of this. It tells a story not of conquest, but of surrender, of particles that pass through barriers not by strength, but by stillness, of knowledge that reveals itself only in the softest terms. There are truths that cannot be grasped, not because we are unworthy, but because the truths themselves are wisps, woven from uncertainty, shaped by silence. In these moments, science becomes something more than data. It becomes a way of being, a posture of awe. You do not need to understand every equation to feel this. You need only to sit, breathe, and notice. The way change happens in the dark, the way possibility flickers in stillness, the way the universe keeps moving, even in the absence of certainty. So, as you prepare to drift into sleep, hold this with you. You live in a world where knowledge and mystery walk hand in hand, where observation opens some doors and closes others, where the deepest truths are not always the ones you can name, but the ones that hum beneath your skin, gentle and unresolved. Sleep in that space now. Let your thoughts soften. Let the questions remain unanswered. let the quiet deepen. Because sometimes the most profound truths are not what we can see, but what we can't. Chapter 10. Philosophers at the Gate. Sometimes the walls we see are not really walls. They appear solid, unmoving, built from the stone of expectation, the steel of logic. But there is something softer beneath the surface. You've known this in your life, haven't you? You reach a point where everything says, this is the end, but something inside whispers, look again. It's the quiet mystery that lives in your heartbeat when you dare to dream. It's the hush of a possibility that slips between moments unnoticed by time. In the world of particles, something astonishing happens. A particle, moving gently through space, approaches a wall it shouldn't be able to pass. It does not have enough energy. The rules say no, the math says stop, and yet it appears on the other side. No explosion, no damage, just a soft defiance of everything expected. Scientists call this quantum tunneling, but to the soul it feels like a metaphor, a sacred breath where impossibility folds and something free, something alive, slips through. This isn't just physics, it's philosophy. It's the moment you wonder if what you've been told about life is all there is. Maybe the limits you've accepted are not limits at all. Maybe they're invitations. What if the wall ahead isn't there to stop you, but to ask if you're willing to believe in the unseen? When we watch the quantum world, we begin to question our own. What if your fears aren't as firm as they seem? What if your dreams, the ones you thought were trapped behind barriers, are already tunneling, already in motion just beneath the surface? Let this idea sit with you, slowly, gently. Let it open the gate in your mind that has long been closed, not with force, but with wonder. All miracles of movement. There is something deeply poetic about how tunneling unfolds. The particle doesn't fight, it doesn't rush, it simply waits at the wall, not knowing, not choosing, just existing in potential. In stillness, it holds the power to change. And that stillness becomes its miracle. You've known that stillness too. The long pause between decisions, the hours of silence before something finally shifts. You wonder if you've gone nowhere, if your quiet waiting means nothing. But in the heart of the quantum world, we learn that stillness is not empty. It is not failure. It is a waiting full of ripples. Picture a single particle, trembling gently near a barrier. It has no right to pass. And yet, because the universe allows for uncertainty, the particle finds itself beyond the wall. Not because it forced its way through, but because the rules of reality are written in soft ink. This isn't just physics. This is life. You wait for healing, and sometimes it arrives when you no longer expect it. You wait for love, and it finds you in the quiet moments between plans. You don't need to push. Sometimes, to move forward, you need only believe that movement can happen, even when all seems still. We often celebrate those who charge forward, who break through. But what if your greatest shift comes not from motion, but from surrender? What if your miracle is born not in action, but in permission, the permission to rest and still be changed? This is the story tunneling tells us, the story of gentle possibility, the story of movement that arises where no path existed. So lie here now, and let this be your moment of quiet movement. A moment where nothing seems to happen, and yet everything begins to. Freedom in probability. In your world, you've been taught to seek certainty, to draw straight lines, to label right and wrong, cause and effect. But in the quantum realm, things are more fluid, more poetic. There are no straight lines, only clouds of chance, only waves of maybe. And somehow, this uncertainty brings a strange kind of freedom. A particle approaches a wall. Will it reflect? Will it pass through? No one can say for sure. All we have are probabilities, soft forecasts of what might be. It's a dance, not a declaration. A song sung in potential. And this too is your life. The moments when you don't know. The chapters where nothing is clear. You fear them, but perhaps they are sacred. Perhaps they are where freedom lives. Not the kind of freedom that controls everything, but the kind that accepts everything.
You've stood at the edge of a decision and felt the tug of opposing winds. You've wondered which way to go, aching for clarity. But maybe clarity isn't always the goal. Maybe the unknown is not your enemy. Maybe it is your womb, the space where something new begins to grow. In tunneling, the particle doesn't choose. It exists inside a field of chances, and somehow, through that strange softness, transformation occurs. A miracle not of will, but of allowance. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to be sure. You only need to stay open to what might be, even if it's just 1%, one flicker of light in a field of shadow. Let this freedom hold you now. Let go of needing to know. Float gently in the soft ocean of possibility. Let your breath rise and fall with the waves, famodapata, because you are more than the choices you've made. You are a horizon of maybe, a dance of not yet waiting to bloom. Lessons from the unseen. There are truths that do not shout. They do not arrive with thunder or fire. They come like tunneling, unseen, silent, invisible until after the fact. The heart of the sun, tunneling is what allows the fire to burn. Without it, the stars would be dark. Without it, the light we call morning would not exist. And yet, you never see it. You never feel it. It does not demand to be noticed. So too are the changes inside you. The quiet healings, the tiny shifts, the courage that grows in silence. These are your personal tunneling events. Small, unnoticed moments that reshape the very course of your life. You pray, you cry, you wait, and you think nothing is changing. But perhaps, like the particle, your soul is already passing through. We think we must change everything through effort. But tunneling says some changes happen through trust, through presence, through the quiet willingness to exist at the edge of what seems impossible. You are not stuck. You are not alone. You are simply standing at the gate of the next thing. The barrier may feel real, but beneath the surface the rules bend. Possibility whispers, and change begins. So let your heart be still now. Let it rest beside the invisible miracle of tunneling. You don't need to understand how it works. You only need to know that it does. You are a part of this story. You are a field of soft chances, a traveller between what is and what might be. And as you drift into sleep, remember this. Not all walls are real. Not all endings are final. And not all miracles make noise. Tonight, the universe carries you through. Not by force, not by will, but by wonder. Chapter 11. The Tunneling Universe. Out beyond the constellations, where the stars begin to thin and the dark becomes a velvet ocean, there exists a silence deeper than sleep. Black holes, those great voids of folded space, sit like ancient gods swallowing light, time and memory. For so long they were believed to be final, not just the end of a star, but the end of all stories. Places where everything entered, but nothing returned. And yet, even in the deepest silence, the universe hums. Tiny fluctuations ripple across the emptiness, a gentle flickering of nothing becoming something and then fading back again. These are quantum fluctuations, pairs of particles born together in the vacuum, blinking into being for the briefest moment before cancelling each other out. A dance of appearance and disappearance. ... Stephen Hawking, with eyes that saw further than most, imagined something extraordinary. He wondered, what if this flicker happened just at the edge of a black hole, the event horizon, where gravity's grip is almost complete? If a pair of particles formed there, perhaps one would be pulled in, and the other, just far enough away, might slip free. A tiny escape, a tunnel through fate itself. And so the impossible became real. Black holes, once thought to consume forever, began to evaporate, not in flames, not in chaos, but in the softest release of energy imaginable. One whisper at a time, over billions of years. This gentle leak, now called Hawking radiation, is born of quantum tunneling, a particle that should not escape, escapes.
not by breaking the rules, but by bending with them, by living in the space between certainty and chance. There is something haunting and beautiful about this idea that even in the darkest, most inescapable place, there is a way out. That even black holes, vast, cold monuments to endings, are not eternal. Maybe that is true for your pain too. Maybe the sorrow that feels like gravity, the grief that feels endless, is already dissolving. Quietly, softly, one whisper at a time. Even the strongest cages cannot hold everything. The universe is made of miracles too small to see, tunneling the cosmos into being. Now drift backward, not in space, but in time, past the stars, past the galaxies, past even the first light, to a moment when there was no moment, when time itself had not yet begun. A silence so pure, so vast, it didn't even echo. In that endless hush, something waited, a stillness stretched across nothingness, but not a calm stillness, a pregnant one, a tension like a held breath, the kind of stillness just before thunder. Physicists call it a false vacuum, a temporary nothing, not quite stable. Beneath its calm, it hid an ache to change. And then it did. Not with a bang, not with a shout, but with a shimmer. A quantum event, a flicker of tunneling. Somewhere, a particle found a way through the invisible wall that held reality still. A single act of cosmic defiance, and through that impossibly narrow passage, the universe was born. Not pushed, not commanded, allowed. The beginning of all things sparked not by force but by chance. And maybe that's how your beginnings arrive too. Not with clarity, not with grand signs, but in the soft shimmer of a new thought, the hush before a choice, the quiet yes in the middle of doubt. You were born from a tunnel, not through metal or stone, but through possibility. Through a moment where the impossible said, "What if?" And the universe said, "Let it be." Cosmic rebirth. We often imagine the universe as a one-way path, a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. But what if that isn't true? What if endings are just curves in a spiral? Not the last word, but the next breath. Some scientists believe that the universe itself may tunnel again, that what began with one shimmer could happen again and again, like a great breathing in and out, a cosmic rhythm. And in that breath, a new world, a fresh beginning. Imagine a dying universe. Old stars burn out, galaxies dim, even black holes collapse inward. But deep in the silence, tunneling begins again. A shift in the vacuum, a tiny flicker, a doorway opens, a new universe slips through. Born not in resistance, but in surrender. Flusher. This is not fiction, it's theory, rooted in the same equations that explain the light of stars and the bending of space. And here's the beauty of it. Rebirth is not dramatic, it's quiet. It happens in silence, in the places no one sees. Just like your own rebirths, from some you have let go of things, hopes, identities, relationships, and thought the story was done. But something in you, even in grief, shimmered. You breathed, you tunneled, you found your way to a new self. Not because you forced it, but because the universe taught you how. Tunneling is not just a way out, it is a way through, a way into something new. You are not a finished thing, you are a cosmos in motion, a soul that tunnels, a heart that is always becoming. From quantum to everything. And now we return to the quiet truth. The universe in all its vastness is shaped by the softest events. A particle appears where it should not be. A black hole loses a whisper of mass. A cosmos tunnels into being. Tunneling is not loud, not grand. It is gentle, patient, invisible. And yet it is responsible for everything. From this fragile phenomenon, galaxies bloom, stars ignite, life begins. From something so improbable you are born. And here you are, wrapped in blankets, eyes slowly closing, listening, breathing. a field of probabilities resting inside the skin of a human being.
You are not separate from this. You are not an observer. You are the continuation of that first shimmer.
The universe does not only tunnel around you, it tunnels through you. The same laws that govern black holes govern your choices. The same softness that created space lives in your breath. So when you feel stuck, when the wall in front of you feels too strong, too real, remember, particles pass through such walls every second, not by breaking them, but by slipping softly into possibility. Let that possibility hold you now. Let your thoughts drift, like stardust on solar winds. Let your fears dissolve into maybe. Let your mind become light enough to float through the walls of what once held you. You do not need certainty tonight. You need only permission to imagine, to rest, to become. Because even in the quiet, the unseen is moving. Even in sleep you are changing. Even in stillness you are tunneling. Let the universe cradle you in its probabilities. Let it remind you that your softness is your strength, that your quiet is not empty. It is where miracles begin. And as you slip into the dream beyond dreams, remember, even the smallest chance can give birth to galaxies. Even the gentlest breath can begin a universe. And even now, especially now, you are becoming something new. Chapter 12. Barriers of Light and Shadow. Sometimes, the things that seem most radiant are the very ones that hold us still. Imagine a beam of sunlight resting on the surface of water. It glistens, dances, and calls you forward, but if you try to pass through it, you find something strange. Not a wall exactly, not solid or harsh, yet something within you pauses. Shimmers can hold, beauty can bind. In the world of quantum particles, light is not just illumination, it is also a boundary. A well of energy, shining bright, can form a cage. In physics, they call it a potential barrier. It is not built from stone or steel, it is made of possibility, of what might happen and what probably won't. A particle that has too little energy should not escape such a field. It should stay where it is, comfortably stuck, softly surrounded. And yet, sometimes it doesn't. You might think that barriers are made of darkness, that the things holding us back are sharp or shadowed. But in truth, they can gleam like gold. In your own life too, the places you feel most stuck may also be the most beautiful. A familiar habit, a long-held belief, a light so bright it blinds you to the way out. Not all prisons are cruel. Some feel like home. The quantum world teaches us a strange lesson, that even radiant walls can trap. And still, beyond them, something waits. A different path, a softer road, an escape, not by force but by simply slipping through. Not all boundaries must be broken. Some dissolve when you stop looking straight at them. Let that settle in your breath for a moment. What if the wall before you isn't as solid as it seems? What if it's made of light, and you are too? Seeing the wall inside. Close your eyes, feel your mind the way a particle might feel a potential field. Soft gradients, invisible curves. You move forward, then pause. Not because something is physically there, but because something is felt there. A threshold, a hesitation, a silent no with no mouth to say it. These are the inner walls, the ones you don't touch, but you carry. You've seen them, haven't you? The quiet fears that hold you back, the memory that flickers just behind the eyes, the belief you've held so long it became part of your shape. These too are barriers, but like in the quantum world, they aren't impassable, only improbable. Science often speaks in probabilities. It doesn't say what will happen, only what should. And in the heart, things are much the same. You may feel that change is unlikely, or that healing is too far to reach, but unlikely is not the same as impossible. A particle can pass through a wall it should not, a thought can shift where it once froze, a life can change in the quietest moment, for no reason but readiness. Inside the brain, that folded galaxy of self, boundaries form from experience. patterns etched by pain or comfort. You learn where not to go. You build expectations, like fences around the garden of your thoughts. And yet even these can be tunneled through, not smashed, not shattered, but passed, softly, like mist through fingers. It's okay to have walls inside you. It's okay to feel the shimmer of limitation. But tonight, as you breathe and drift, let this be the question that rocks you gently to sleep. What if the barrier is only there until you stop believing it must be? Tunneling the mind. Within your skull lies a cathedral of light. Billions of neurons, each with branching arms, each pulsing with electric fire. And somewhere in that dance, maybe, just maybe, quantum whispers stir. Some scientists have wondered, could the brain, that organ of thought and memory, be more than chemical? Could it hum with quantum possibility? Could the very act of consciousness, this soft flicker you call you, depend on particles slipping through invisible gaps? It's a dreamlike idea, that your thoughts are not only the result of brain cells sparking, but of something deeper, stranger. That your decisions, those quiet-aching moments of yes or no, might arise not from logic alone, but from the very fabric of the cosmos, weaving itself through you. There is something in the way a particle tunnels that feels like intuition. It does not push, it does not force, it does not reason its way forward, it simply goes. When the universe says no, it sometimes says yes anyway. And perhaps your mind is not so different. Have you ever made a choice you could not explain? Felt drawn to something without knowing why? Changed your path not because it made sense, but because it felt true? In those moments, perhaps, you are like the particle. You are tunneling, not through logic, but through possibility. Passing through barriers that probability says you shouldn't. Moving by feel, not by proof. We may never know for certain whether the mind dances with quantum rhythms, but we do know this. The self is not a straight line. It leaps, it dreams, it breaks its own rules in pursuit of meaning. So tonight, as your thoughts soften into mist, consider that the act of becoming, of awakening, of healing, of simply being, may be the most quantum journey of all. A passage without force, a transformation that flows through the wall rather than against, escape without breaking. Not every story of escape begins with a struggle. Some begin with stillness. Imagine a droplet of dew on the edge of a leaf, just before it falls. It does not fight, it does not scream, it simply reaches the end of its tension and lets go. That's what quantum tunneling is like. That's what change can feel like too. In a world so often shaped by force, by collision, by conflict, we are taught to break down walls, to hammer through, to fight until the barrier gives way. But tunneling offers a quieter path. It suggests a kind of surrender, a softness so precise that it slips between the cracks of what we thought was real. In your life, there will be moments when you are faced with a wall, of habit, of fear, of expectation, and everything in you will want to push. But what if you didn't? What if, instead of pushing, you simply passed through? There is a quiet courage in softness, a strength in stillness, a revolution in grace. The particle that tunnels does not leave a hole behind. It doesn't scar the wall. It doesn't announce its passage. It just appears on the other side. Like dawn through a closed window. Like forgiveness without an apology. Like peace without a reason. So tonight, as you drift into the folds of sleep, feel the barriers in your own heart, the places you once believed were fixed, and imagine yourself gently, without effort, passing through. Not to escape, but to emerge, to become. In the end, the lesson of quantum tunneling is not about breaking the rules. It's about realizing that some of them were never real. Let that thought settle in your chest like warm starlight and rest, dear traveller. You've already begun to pass through. Chapter 13. The Probability Sea. Beneath the surface of everything you know, below the bones of the world, beneath the ticking clock of time, there is a softer layer, a deeper current, a hidden rhythm made not of facts, but of maybes. This is where it all begins, not in certainty, but in a question, a shimmer, a breath. You've grown up in a world of solid ground, where apples fall from trees and stars rise on cue. You've been taught that 1 + 1 is always 2, that tomorrow follows today, that things make sense. But if you lean just slightly beyond that surface, you'll find a quieter truth. Nothing is truly certain. Not even the smallest particles obey fixed commands. In the quantum world, certainty is not a rule, it is a rare and passing visitor. A particle does not stay in one place, it does not even choose a place. Until you look, it simply exists everywhere it might be, at once. It is a ripple of possibility, a song not yet sung. And yet, it is not chaos. It is not noise. It is a delicate probabilistic hush, a lullaby of could-bes, like the pause before a bird takes flight, like the hush of a forest just before rain. You may have felt this in your own life, in the in-between spaces, before the decision, before the kiss, before the turning of a chapter, when everything is still possible and nothing is yet certain. That is the probability sea, and you are already floating in it. Tunneling, the quiet miracle at the heart of quantum physics, is not about breaking the rules, it is about listening to the deeper ones. The ones that whisper, even this is possible, that even when the path is blocked, there may still be a way through, not by force, but by simply being. So when you feel the weight of a wall, in your heart, in your path, in your breath, remember, nothing is truly final, not even in the smallest folds of matter. The universe hums with loopholes, with kindness, with maybes. And maybe, just maybe, that's where hope lives.
Wave functions and dreams.
Close your eyes. Imagine a ripple, not in water, but in space itself. A soft vibration spreading outward, wider and wider, never stopping, never settling. This is the shape of a particle. Before it is known, before it is seen, not a dot, not a point, but a wave function, a cloud of probabilities, a dream waiting to become real. In physics, this wave function tells us where a particle might be, not where it is, but where it may shimmer into being if we dare to look. It is a field of dreams written in mathematical breath. It stretches across the universe, vast and patient, full of potential, and it collapses. The moment we look, the moment we measure. The wave folds in on itself and becomes point. A particle. A single here, now, this. The ripple becomes a raindrop. The possibility becomes a choice. Isn't that what dreams are like? You hold so many of them. Quiet thoughts, unrealized selves, unopened doors. They float in you like wave functions, waiting. Some never collapse. Some never need to. They simply remind you, you are more than one story. You are many, and you are still unfolding. Tunneling happens inside this wave of possibility. A particle's wave function spreads into forbidden territory, through a wall, beyond a boundary. Not because it broke anything, but because its dream was wide enough to reach through. Perhaps your soul works the same way, stretching beyond what seems allowed, leaking light into places you thought were closed, appearing on the other side of pain, not by smashing through it, but by simply being willing to exist there. This is what it means to be alive in a probabilistic universe. You are not bound to one version of yourself. You are a sea of unfolding. And tonight, as you drift toward rest, let yourself become wave again, before the form, before the label, before the certainty. You are a possibility, still in bloom. From collapse comes form. There is a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when the wave becomes the world, when all the shimmering possibilities fall into one shape. This moment is called collapse. Not the kind that breaks, but the kind that crystallizes, like mist becoming snow, like silence becoming song. Before that moment, the particle is not here or there. It is only a whisper, a maybe, a soft breath across the fabric of existence. But when it is seen, when it is touched, when the world says now, it becomes one thing, and the rest fades like moonlight at dawn. This is not a loss, it is a birth. Out of uncertainty comes clarity. Out of the wide sea comes a single wave. Out of the many paths your life might take, comes one step forward. And even tunneling obeys this law. The wave function stretches through the wall like music through a door. And if the probabilities align, if the silent yes is strong enough, the particle collapses on the other side. It is there, fully, softly, without breaking the barrier, without noise, just presence, just permission. So many moments in your life have been like this. You stood before something you thought you could not pass. A heartbreak, a fear, a silence. And then, somehow, you were beyond it. You didn't break it, you became beyond it. That is the gift of collapse. It gives shape to what was only potential. It says, now, here, you. And still, even after form arrives, the wave lives on. Each moment collapses into the next. Each truth is only the beginning of another maybe. So tonight, as your thoughts settle like dust in golden light, remember, you are not a finished thing. You are the gentle folding of dreams into form. You are a wave in slow bloom, and there is no hurry. Form will come. Let it come softly. Riding the tide of maybe. Imagine now the sea. Not the ocean of salt and tide, but the deeper one. The sea of probability that holds the fabric of the world. In this sea, everything is born, not from certainty, but from maybe. The Earth orbits not because it must, but because it can. The stars shine not from law, but from likelihood. Even your breath, this soft, gentle motion, is a ripple in the probability sea. Nothing is forced, nothing is fixed. Everything flows. And yet, in this flow there is beauty, there is shape, there is rhythm. Quantum tunneling, that quiet slip through the forbidden, is not an accident. It is a dance with this sea, a surrender to what could be, a leap not across space, but into the arms of potential. You've done this before, when you loved despite the risk, when you forgave without reason, when you trusted a path that made no sense except to your soul. In those moments, you did not need certainty. You rode the tide of maybe, and it carried you somewhere real. You are still doing it, right now, as your body sinks into the weight of the bed, as your thoughts soften into fog, you are floating, not knowing what tomorrow brings. And that is okay. That is perfect. Because the universe itself floats, it dreams, it changes, it tunnels. Even now, 1,000,000 particles are slipping through invisible walls, not with fire, not with force, but with faith in the sea, with the knowing that possibility is enough. And you too are part of that sea, made of it, moved by it.
Let that be your lullaby tonight.
That you do not need to know. You only need to allow, to drift, to become, one gentle collapse at a time. For lost, the walls are soft, the night is wide, and the tide will carry you home. Sleep now, sweet traveller. The wave is waiting, and it carries you gently into dream. Chapter 14. From Thought to Theory. In the beginning, before we had words for the strange leaps of particles, before we understood their secret dances through walls, there was only silence and thought. A quiet question floating in the mind of a man with a pen. The world, it seemed, did not always obey the lines we drew. Something moved beneath the surface. A soft disobedience, a quiet skipping of steps. And someone had to paint it into form. Imagine a cold room lit by a flickering lamp. A man sits hunched over a desk, eyes lost in the folds of numbers. His name is Erwin Schrödinger, and he does not yet know that he is writing the music of existence. He is not drawing shapes, but waves. Waves that do not ripple through water, but through being. Equations that stretch like soft threads between the known and the unknowable. With the delicate curve of his symbols, Schrödinger shows the world a new kind of particle. One that does not sit in place, but flows like a thought, like a probability. In his wave equation, the smallest pieces of reality begin to lose their edges. They become possibility, wrapped in silence, their location no longer fixed, their energy no longer certain. But there is more hidden in the equation, something that even he does not fully see at first. Within those mathematical brushstrokes lies the seed of tunneling, of motion without momentum, of arrival without passage, an echo of something once thought impossible. It is not a discovery born of machines or measurements. It is born in stillness, in abstraction, in faith. A theoretical ripple drawn by a quiet hand, listening to the hush beneath reality. The wave equation, soft and strange, whispers that particles might not just reflect off barriers. They might slip through them. And with that whisper, a new kind of magic begins. Theorists and doubters. The idea, like the particles it described, did not pass easily. It had to tunnel its way through resistance, through skepticism, through disbelief. For a long time, scientists stared at the math and shook their heads. The world was solid, predictable, classical. It followed rules, Newton's rules, crisp and clean. So how could anything pass through a wall without breaking it? It felt absurd, wrong, even frightening now. But the universe does not care for comfort. It dances to its own strange tune, and it reveals itself slowly, not with certainty, but with clues. The first to believe were not many. A few theorists looked at the math and saw something beautiful in its strangeness. They said, perhaps the world is not made of things but of chances. Perhaps particles are not pebbles but waves, swelling, fading, merging. Perhaps boundaries are not borders, they are invitations. They ran the numbers. They saw the wave function stretch past the edges of a potential barrier. They watched it dip into forbidden zones. And when they did the work carefully, they saw something quietly astonishing. A small but real chance that the particle would be found on the other side. This was tunneling, a name that would come later. For now, it was just a glimmer in the math, a trembling maybe in a sea of no's. Still, many resisted. The idea of a particle passing through a wall without force felt like nonsense. It was too slippery, too poetic. Theories, after all, were meant to match the world, but this one reimagined it. It would take time and slow belief for the community to listen, to accept that nature at its tiniest scales is not tidy. It is not firm. It is woven of waves. And in those early decades, the theorists waited, watching the silence, trusting the math, hoping the universe would one day reveal what their minds had already begun to see. Elegant equations, unruly effects. It wasn't long before the math began to bleed into the real, into metals, into atoms, into machines so sensitive they could feel the trembling of electrons. What had once been an elegant idea, a beautiful wave on paper, began to show its shadow in the lab. Electrons, it turned out, could vanish from one side of a barrier and appear on the other. Not by climbing over it, not by digging through it, but by fading and reappearing, by tunneling. It was no longer a question of belief, it was measurable, repeatable, true. But still the explanations lagged behind. The phenomenon was real, but the understanding of it resisted neat packaging. People wanted pictures, analogies. They wanted to see what was happening. But tunneling does not offer easy metaphors. It is not a bridge, not a tunnel, not a hole through the wall. It is the quiet admission that the wall might not be a wall at all. The equations were stable, beautiful, predictive. But the effect remained unruly, strange. It violated intuition. It felt like cheating. And yet the universe allowed it. In the hearts of atoms, in the sparks of stars, in the gentle hum of scanning microscopes, tunneling was at work. Particles ghosting through forbidden zones, reshaping what we thought was possible. Even in your body right now, inside the enzymes of your cells, tunneling whispers. It helps reactions move forward that would otherwise sit still for 1,000,000 years. Life itself depends on this quiet loophole. The theories held, the math sang true, but the mystery stayed open. This is the beauty of science, that something can be both understood and forever mysterious, that the universe gives you the tools to predict, but not always the right to understand. Some things remain dreams even when they are real. A new kind of faith. What does it mean to believe in something you cannot see, something you cannot touch, or even picture clearly? This kind of belief is quiet. It asks for patience, for humility, for the willingness to let go of what feels true and lean into what might be. To believe in tunneling, one had to accept that reality does not always follow common sense, that particles can be both here and not here, that the wall is not a wall, that motion can happen without movement, that boundaries are not ends, they are thresholds. And once that belief took root, it began to grow into fields, into devices, into technologies that now shape our world. Quantum tunneling is in the electronics that power your thoughts. It is in the sun's fusion, where protons tunnel into one another to birth light. It is in the very breath you take, the molecules dancing through thresholds, the whisper of life making its way forward. All because someone long ago believed the math, believed the mystery, believed that what we cannot see is not the same as what cannot be true. In the soft light of night, this belief feels almost spiritual, a faith in nature's strangeness, a trust that the world holds more than it shows, a knowing that even the impossible can be quietly real. As you drift now through the velvet folds of sleep, You carry that faith in you. You too are made of particles that tunnel, that move without moving, that pass through silence into being. You do not need to understand every part of the story. You only need to feel it, to rest in the beauty of knowing that the universe, wild and impossible, makes space for what should not be. And that includes you, Stuber, a being of thought, of theory, of trembling maybes made real. So close your eyes now and let the wave carry you. The wall is softer than it seems, and beyond it, wonder waits. Chapter 15. Soundless Thunder. It begins in silence, a quiet so complete you would miss it if you weren't looking. But in the heart of that silence, something slips through, not with a bang, not with a crack or a tremble, but with a softness so subtle it moves beneath knowing. A particle, so small you cannot see it, passes through a wall it should not cross. It does not break the wall, it does not climb over, it simply appears on the other side. This is tunneling, a word that sounds like digging, like effort, like force, but tunneling in the quantum world is a kind of whisper. It is a breath that moves through barriers that, by all classical reasoning, should be impenetrable. You imagine a ball rolling toward a hill, not with speed, not with strength, but slowly, gently, without enough energy to climb over the top. And yet, somehow that ball is found on the other side, not because it pushed or climbed or leapt, but because in the quiet quantum night, there is another way. The universe, in its smallest corners, does not obey the rules we once believed were firm. Probability replaces certainty, position blurs with potential, and the walls we thought were solid, they breathe, they shimmer, they yield without yielding. In the softness of reality, deeper than time, deeper than space, a particle simply is where it could not be. No doors open, no alarms sound, no heat is released. There is no rupture, no tearing of fabric, only a soft appearance, a stillness that changes everything. Because from this simple impossibility, this silent slipping through, comes a story bigger than stars. Tunneling births the fire of the sun. It drives the nuclear heart of stars that light the galaxies. It hums inside the circuits of your computer. It shapes life itself. And yet, it never once raises its voice. The strength of silence. We often think of strength as noise, a lion's roar, a storm's fury, the crash of waves against stone. But here in the quantum world, strength is quiet. When a particle tunnels, it is not doing the impossible, it is doing the improbable. It is behaving exactly as the universe allows, not with rebellion, but with permission. There is no resistance in its movement, no war against the wall, only surrender, stillness, and passage. Imagine this, a raindrop held against a pane of glass you expected to fall back, to slide down, to be stopped. But it does something else. It disappears, not into the glass, but beyond it, appearing on the other side without a trace of how. That's tunneling. Not magic, but a different kind of logic. One built on waveforms and possibilities, one that listens more than it speaks. In this quantum hush, particles find paths we cannot trace. They don't force outcomes, they don't break through. They arrive, softly, surely, rewriting what we thought was certain. And that strength, the strength of not breaking, but becoming, teaches us something we've long forgotten. That power does not always need to shout. That sometimes the most lasting change arrives gently. That what endures is often what bends, what slips through, what trusts the unseen path. The sun, in its blazing silence, burns with tunneling. Every moment, inside every atom of hydrogen, particles tunnel to fuse, to become something new. And the light we feel on our skin, warm and ancient and golden, began in a moment of silence. Not with a bang, but with a passage, subatomic resilience. At the edge of the impossible, particles wait, trapped in tiny prisons, hemmed in by energy barriers taller than any mountain. The walls are steep, The odds are long, and yet there is movement. Tunneling is not certainty, it is chance wrapped in patience. The longer a particle waits, the greater the chance it may be found on the other side, not because it grows stronger, not because the wall grows weaker, but because the nature of being allows for the softest rebellion to be somewhere you were not supposed to be. In this quiet defiance there is resilience, a kind that does not resist the wall but outlasts it, that does not rage but remains, waiting, becoming probability, becoming presence. And it works. Across the heart of the universe, in stars too distant to name, particles that should be stuck are not. They leap not with might, but with trust, in the quantum breath that moves beneath the surface. You can almost hear it if you listen, not with ears, but with wonder. A rhythm beneath reality, a trembling softness, a heartbeat beneath time. In that rhythm, everything endures. Radioactive decay, though it sounds like something falling apart, is actually the quiet unfolding of tunneling. A neutron in an unstable atom does not shout when it leaves, it waits until the moment comes, until the possibility opens, until it simply goes. This is not chaos. This is not accident. It is elegance. It is precision beneath the noise. And it shows us that even the smallest things, the most fragile, the most trapped, carry within them the power to move, to change, to reach the other side. Not by force, but by being, by allowing, by trusting the dance of quantum grace, by that specific cetera, by lessons in grace. So much of science speaks in numbers, in formulas, in forces, but tunneling speaks in silence, in probability, in surrender. It tells us that what moves the universe is not always the loudest thing in the room, that gentleness is not weakness, it is depth. It is the ability to cross what looks uncrossable, not through domination but through understanding. You are made of these particles, your body, your breath, your thoughts, all composed of matter that once tunneled through stars, through time, through barriers seen and unseen. The warmth in your chest, the pulse in your wrist, the light behind your eyes, they are all echoes of quantum grace. And if the smallest thing can slip through the tallest wall, what else might be possible? What walls in your life seem unpassable, and yet might be waiting not for force, but for stillness? Tunneling is not just physics, it is a metaphor, a message whispered across the fabric of being that you do not always need to push, that sometimes you need only to be, to wait, to trust that the nature of things includes softness, includes passage, includes quiet victory. In your life, there will be walls, energy barriers, thresholds you feel too small to cross. But remember the particle. Remember the silence. Change does not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it arrives like breath, like dawn, like the softest note in the quietest song. And in that softness, everything shifts. So, tonight, as you close your eyes, feel the tunneling world beneath you. Hear the silent thunder of particles moving, of walls giving way to presence, of the universe humming in hush, moving forward without ever breaking. Hoisen Yawisen, let that silence carry you. Let it be your strength. Let it be your lesson. Not everything that matters needs to make noise. Pop, put, 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 put. Sometimes, the greatest force in the universe is the one that moves, unseen. Chapter 16. The Tunnel as a Teacher. You close your eyes and the world grows quiet. Beneath the hush of your breath, the universe keeps moving, not in bursts of noise or certainty, but in ripples of maybe, in currents of possibility. Somewhere deep inside the fabric of all things, a particle waits at the edge of a barrier. It does not rush, it does not retreat, it simply remains, pulsing with the potential to pass through what should be solid. This is quantum tunneling, and in its silence, it teaches us something we often forget, that movement doesn't always come with momentum, that progress, in both physics and life, sometimes happens by simply staying present in the unknown. You too have felt it, the moment when all forward paths seem blocked, when you're standing before an invisible wall that shouldn't be there but somehow is, A moment when effort feels wasted and clarity seems out of reach. But then slowly, quietly, you find yourself on the other side. Not because you fought harder, but because you endured.
Like particles, you move through uncertainty, not with power, but with patience. Not always by knowing the way, but by trusting there is one. The tunnel is not just for electrons. It is for hearts, for thoughts, for dreams that dare to exist in impossible spaces. Tunneling is a lesson in subtle strength, a reminder that we are made of the very same things that slip through walls in the dark, with faith, not force. And as you rest tonight, you carry that echo inside you, a softness that moves mountains no one else can see. Believing in the breakthrough. Sometimes you don't know you've broken through. And how often have your own transformations happened that way? Not with lightning, not with ceremony, but slowly, secretly, through layers of hesitation and fog, through the ache of not knowing. There are wars in the human mind, invisible but strong, built from doubt, from fear, from stories we've told ourselves for years. I can't, I won't, I shouldn't, I'm not enough. And yet, in spite of them, we sometimes find ourselves beyond them, not because the wall was false, not because we destroyed it, but because something inside us, some deep, patient current, knew how to pass through. There is a kind of magic in this, a physics of the spirit. You don't need to explain how you healed, how you changed, how you dared to hope again. You only need to notice that you did. Tunneling shows us that belief isn't about certainty. It's about staying close to the barrier, long enough, still enough, willing to remain in the moment until something shifts. You don't need to push every time. Sometimes you simply need to stay present until grace carries you through. And when it does, you may not even feel it happen. Only the quiet surprise of finding yourself where once you only dreamed of being. Hidden paths. In every moment of your life, there are paths unseen, possibilities folded into the fabric of now, waiting like unopened letters. Most of them are invisible, they do not flash, they do not scream, but they wait, just as the tunnel particle waits, for the moment to be chosen. The classical world would have you believe the route is straight, that cause leads to effect, that steps must be logical, visible, explainable. But the quantum world knows otherwise. It knows that some paths only exist once you walk them, that some journeys are revealed not in advance, but through motion. This is the hidden trail of becoming, the quiet turning of the soul through choices you don't yet understand. It is not loud, it is not even clear, but it is true. Tunneling is the science of such truth. A particle does not see the way through the barrier, it only sees its side, its limits, its laws. And yet by existing in a state of maybe, it opens the door. It becomes probability. It becomes movement. And so do you. Every time you keep going when you are unsure, every time you trust the silence, every time you breathe through the discomfort of not knowing, you embody this same lesson. Some of the most important roads you will take, in love, in work, in healing, will not make sense when you begin. They will look like barriers. But if you lean in, gently, softly, they may become passageways. This is the quiet map of the universe. A network of soft doorways drawn in places where you least expect. Paths that are not built until your heart decides to walk. The universe as mirror. As you drift deeper into rest, let this truth settle like stardust in your chest. The universe is not just out there, it is also within you. Not only in your atoms, in your cells, but in the very way you live, love, and grow. Tunneling, in all its quiet wonder, is not just about particles. It is about transformation, about becoming, about softness that shifts the shape of the world. Waito ma Shadak. It mirrors something sacred, that change does not always arrive with thunder, that the most powerful moments of your life might come not through noise, but through stillness. You are a part of this cosmos. You carry within you the same laws that let light shine, that let time breathe, that let particles pass through the impossible. Or maybe that is the secret the tunnel teaches best, that resistance isn't always what wins, that sometimes grace is what moves us forward. You don't always need the plan. You don't need all the answers.
You need only to listen to the space between the seconds, to rest near the boundary, to trust that something deep within, quiet, invisible and sure, is already reaching toward what lies beyond. Tonight, as the stars breathe in silence above you and your body begins to rest, know this: you are made of things that tunnel, things that pass through the unpassable. Not with violence, but with peace. Not with certainty, but with willingness. Not with force, but with love. So, sleep gently now. The universe is not against you. It is within you. And it is soft. And it is strong. And it is whispering. Even this barrier can become a path. Chapter 17. A crack in the world's foundation. Once, not long ago, in the grand clockwork of human time, we thought we understood the story. The world obeyed rules, simple, elegant rules. Apples fell, arrows curved, pendulums swung like lullabies across clock faces, and the sun, ever faithful, returned each morning like a promise kept. Science, in those days, was a quiet confidence. We believed that if we could just look closely enough, if we asked the right questions in the right order, the whole of reality would reveal itself like a solved puzzle. But here you are now, in the hush of night. The room is still, the sky above is scattered with starlight, and something deeper whispers between the constellations. Something not quite still, not quite solid. A particle moves where it should not move. It appears where it should not appear. It acts like a dream, impossible and yet real. This is quantum tunneling, a gentle rebellion against the neatness of nature, a rule that breaks the rules, a mystery tucked into the spaces between atoms. And in its quiet defiance, something begins to shift. You begin to shift. Because science, once a fortress of certainty, has turned inward. It listens now, it humbles itself before wonder. No longer only chasing answers, it now seeks better questions. The world is not a locked vault, it is a living breath. And in that breath, in that impossible slip of a particle through a wall, lies the first tremble in the foundation. Reality and revision. Imagine a wall. Picture it clearly, a boundary of stone, solid, unmoving. It stands between one space and another. In your waking world, such walls are real. They stop you, they separate, they define. ... But what if the wall is not what it seems? In the realm of the very small, the quantum, this wall begins to blur. Particles approach it, and some, without enough energy to overcome it, do not bounce back. Instead, they vanish, and then, gently, quietly, they reappear on the other side. They haven't broken the wall, haven't gone around it. They've tunneled through it, as if the wall was never truly solid, just a suggestion. You might think this is rare, a fluke, but it isn't. The sun shines because of tunneling. Life, as you know it, rests on this ghostly movement. The stars burn not in obedience to certainty, but in devotion to improbability. And so we revise, not the equations, not yet, but the very feeling of what it means to know. If the particle can cheat the barrier, maybe the barrier was never real. Or maybe real is more than we thought. Maybe it's a shifting spectrum, a tide that changes with every gaze. The floor beneath your feet is not stone. It is a sea of chances, a tide of maybes, held together, barely, by perception. The world we now know is not built from bricks of matter, but from clouds of possibility. Things do not simply are, they could be. And in this gentle undoing of the old, a new kind of knowledge stirs, one that does not grasp but listens, one that kneels before the mystery and says, "Tell me what you are." Bridges to other worlds. Now imagine the moment of tunneling, the flicker, the breach, the vanishing. A particle exists here, then it does not, then it is elsewhere. This moment feels like a crossing, like a bridge built of silence, strung across the impossible. And it leads us to wonder, are we watching a journey or a glimpse of something far larger? Could this leap, this flicker of defiance, be more than escape?
Could it be connection? Could it be invitation?
Some whisper of multiverses stirs here. Not in loud theory, but in poetic tremble,
Because if a particle can choose between outcomes, can reach a place it should not reach. Perhaps there are other paths, other realities, layered quietly upon this one, like the petals of a closed flower. Not fantasy, not fiction, but unseen pages in the book of existence.
tunneling does not demand belief in other worlds, but it leaves the door open, ajar, swaying gently in the cosmic breeze. And maybe, just maybe, there are many yours. A version of you who turned left, not right. A version who never spoke the words you regret. A version who still waits at the edge of a dream you once abandoned calling. You do not need to see them. It is enough to feel that they might be there. It is enough to know that reality, the one you touch each day, might be just one thread in a vast, shimmering weave. Tunneling is a crack, yes, but not a crack of destruction, a crack of light, a secret window through which other realities softly breathe.
And through that breath, the universe becomes not smaller, but endless.
Living in a leaking universe. Now let us turn inward, gently.
Feel your breath, the rise and fall. That soft rhythm is built from atoms, and each atom sings with quantum motion.
You are not watching this universe from outside. You are made of it. The tunneling happens inside you. It is not a distant phenomenon. It is the reason you exist. In your DNA, in your cells, in the flickering thoughts that pass like birds through your mind. Particles dance, they shimmer, they tunnel. You are not a machine. You are a mystery. Brew. Just as particles escape impossible boundaries, so do you. Point.
There are moments in your life that make no sense. Moments of sudden change, of unexpected grace. Decisions you made that you still cannot explain. Chances you took that opened a future.
You did not climb the wall. You tunneled through. And in those moments you were the universe, leaking, humming, alive with the pulse of possibility. The old world, the one of cause and effect, of cold certainty, cannot explain you fully, but the new one, the one shaped by cracks and flickers, by strange bridges and softened walls, maybe it can. Maybe the universe is not a machine after all. Maybe it is a body, a being, a story unfolding in rhythms we barely understand. And maybe, just maybe, that story is not separate from you. Maybe you're a verse in the poem of it all. So tonight, as you drift, remember this. Tunneling is not just physics. It is the signature of a universe that does not close in on itself. It leaks, it opens, it invites. And you, soft soul, are part of that sacred invitation. Canny door, you are the particle. You are the barrier. You are the crossing. Tine Lomin. Sleep then, knowing that you belong to a reality that moves, that whispers, that dares to let go of its edges. Not because it is broken, but because it is beautiful. Because it trusts the mystery more than the map. And in the soft dark beyond your thoughts, the universe is still tunneling. Still becoming, still dreaming you into being. Chapter 18, The Universe That Whispers. In the hush of the quantum world, not every particle makes it through. Not every attempt at tunneling is a success. Some particles approach the wall, brush against its certainty, and then drift gently back, as if bowing to the boundary. But even in this quiet return, something is offered. Nothing is wasted here. In the classical world, failure is an end. In the quantum world, even a failed passage speaks, not in sound, but in possibility. It tells us something about what was tried, and what still might be. The particle that doesn't cross still bends the probabilities, still alters the shape of the wave, still becomes part of a deeper story. Imagine standing beside a great river, watching as the water touches the bank. It doesn't always flood over, yet its very presence shapes the land. It soaks into the soil, it feeds the roots. In the same way, a particle that never fully tunnels still leaves a trace on the landscape of potential. It shapes the field, nudges the odds, whispers a soft maybe into the silence. There is beauty in that,
a kind of cosmic kindness where even what doesn't happen matters.
And isn't that true in your life too? The roads not taken, the dreams that touched the edge of becoming, then faded into the background. They still shaped you. They still taught you where the walls were and where the softness might live beyond them. In the quantum world, the act of trying is not forgotten. It is folded into the math, the memory, the music of the universe.
So when a particle pauses before the barrier and turns back, it's not defeat, it's part of the dance. Every motion contributes, every attempt is counted. Nothing is wasted in the quiet unfolding of reality, not even this.
The poetry of possibility.
In the language of science, we use equations, symbols, arrows, probabilities. But in the language of the heart, we use poetry. And in the world of quantum tunneling, both languages are needed. Because what we're witnessing isn't just mechanics, it's a kind of invitation. A reminder that reality isn't rigid, that truth can shimmer, that what seems impossible may simply be waiting for a different path. Quantum tunneling tells us that the world is soft at its edges. It tells us that barriers can be illusions, that even in the tightest, darkest places, something can move, can change, can appear where it had no right to be. That sounds like science, but it also sounds like spirit, like hope, like faith.
When a particle tunnels through a wall, it does so not with force, but with presence. It doesn't bash or break. It simply exists where it shouldn't, for a moment. And in that moment, the impossible becomes real. How do you measure that? How do you write it down? The equations are elegant, but they miss the emotion. That swelling feeling when you realise the rules you thought were unbreakable might just bend when no one is looking.
Tunneling is more than a phenomenon, it's a symbol, a metaphor, a gentle proof that the universe is not a closed book, that there are pages we haven't turned, that between logic and mystery there is a trembling line, and sometimes the tiniest particle will cross it, just to remind us to believe. So you lie here, breathing slow beneath the stars, and perhaps something in you feels it too, the poetry of it all. The quiet assurance that you are also made of things that can pass through walls. That deep within, something unseen and shimmering is always trying, always reaching, always tunneling toward the light. Soft power. We are taught the power is loud, that strength comes with noise, engines, explosions, applause. But in the quantum world, it is silence that changes everything. Stillness that wins. It is the quiet particle that teaches us the most, not by charging ahead, but by existing in two places at once, by slipping through a boundary without disturbing a single stone. Tunneling does not roar, it hums. It doesn't demand attention. It offers a suggestion. It moves not with speed but with surrender, trusting the rules of its strange realm to let it pass through the impossible. That is a different kind of power, a softer kind, a deeper one. And maybe you've known it too. The strength that comes from patience, the courage that arrives not in battle, but in stillness. The way a seed waits in the soil, not forcing growth, just trusting time. The way the moon moves oceans, not by touch, but by quiet pull. Quantum tunneling reminds us that there is power in the pause. That influence doesn't need to be loud to be real, that the most profound changes often happen quietly, beneath the surface, unnoticed until everything has shifted. It is in the whisper, not the shout, in the space between thoughts, in the breath between actions. And perhaps tonight, as your thoughts slow and your eyelids grow heavy, you can feel that soft power within yourself, the ability to change, not through effort, but through being. The presence that doesn't push, but persists. The particle in you that says, I will not force the wall, I will find another way. The whisper beyond the wall. And so we arrive at the end, not with a bang, not with a lesson, but with a whisper. A soft sigh that says, you've heard the story now. Of particles that pass through barriers, of a universe that bends in silence. Of rules that are rewritten, not by force, but by wonder. You've travelled through uncertainty, through waves and walls, possibilities and paradoxes. You've listened to the quiet music beneath the noise of reality.
And now, as the night deepens, we return to stillness, to that final moment before sleep, where the world becomes soft and wide and strange again. Quantum tunneling is not just a fact, it's a feeling. It's the feeling of walking towards something you're not sure you can cross, and doing it anyway. It's the knowledge that you are part of a world that allows this, that beneath the surface of what is, there is always a maybe, always a path, always a whisper saying yes. So rest now, not with answers, but with awe. Let your breath fall into rhythm with the hum of the atoms, the dance of the waves, the soft power of presence. You are made of the same stuff as the stars. You are stitched from particles that remember how to tunnel through the impossible. You are part of the great mystery, the one that speaks without sound, that moves without motion, that whispers beyond the wall. And as your eyes close and your body sinks deeper into stillness, know this: the story doesn't end here. It never does. There is always another moment, another breath, another shimmer of maybe. The universe is not finished with you. It is only just beginning to speak.
Listen closely now.
Do you hear it? Nah, the whisper beyond the wall. The soft yes, you start. The final truth, waiting in the quiet. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to dream. And somewhere beneath it all, the particle moves.